Welcome back to Lviv in Ukraine. Two Russian oligarchs have tonight been sanctioned by the Foreign Office, restricting their ability to carry out any financial transaction in the UK. They are billionaire Alisher Usmanov, who has links to Everton Football Club, and former Russian Deputy Prime Minister Igor Shuvalov, who was named by Keir Starmer in Parliament yesterday under parliamentary privilege. Well, we're joined now by Dr. Alina Polyakova from the Centre for European Policy Analysis, and also by Misha Glenny, a journalist and author of the Mafia book about Eastern European organised crime. Thank you very much both for being with me this evening. Misha, first of all, are these two the sorts of people that the government should be going after?
I think definitely their track record is fairly clear. Both Usmanov and Shuvalov have been closely engaged with Putin for a very long time. It's slightly surprising that it took us this long to get there. Britain appeared to take the lead on engaging with the sanctioning of oligarchs earlier this week, about a week or so ago, and then they started to drag their feet, and the European Union actually took the lead. And of course, yesterday, Usmanov's absolutely extraordinary yacht. I mean, it looks like a cruise liner was seized in Hamburg. So the Germans were on it. And yes, these are the sort of people who are very close to Putin and whose relationship involves not only political engagement, but probably financial engagement as well.
And Anna, a simple question really, does sanctioning oligarchs work? Does it have the desired impact?
Well, I think it depends on what we mean by work. I mean, it's certainly very disruptive to Putin's inner circle. And we have to remember that Russia isn't run like a democratic country like the UK or the United States or others. It's really run by a sort of clan. And some people that belong to that clan are in government, some are outside the government. And certainly they're all intertwined from a financial perspective. And we don't know exactly how. But every time we hit one of these high-level close members that are a deep part of this clan, it will reverberate and have effects on others, including Mr. Putin, most likely. And certainly, I think in the longer term, it may make some of these individuals a bit more reticent about supporting Mr. Putin's policies if he can no longer guarantee their access to their own wealth and their financial assets, which has been the basis really of their support for Mr. Putin for all these years.
Misha, what do you make of Abramovich, the Chelsea owner? You know, he's clearly disposing of his assets there. Will other oligarchs be doing similar things?
Yes, I believe so. And a lot of them will have been working on this for a little time, even before the invasion, I would have thought. I mean, you notice with Abramovich, that he has said that he will give the proceeds of the Chelsea sale to victims of the Ukrainian war. He doesn't say whether they're Russian or Ukrainian victims, but it's a gesture which we're seeing amongst some of the oligarchs who are clearly hedging their bets about what's going to happen in the future. And I think there's an important message here to put across that with all of the sanctions, they don't just hit oligarchs, they're also hitting the Russian people as well, very, very severely already in a short space of time. And I think the message is to send out that these are not designed to hurt the Russian people per se. They are designed to put pressure on the economic and political elite, and particularly those around Putin. And they're two different things, because if we accept that this is a highly undemocratic society, and particularly in the last week, I think that Putin has gone full North Korea in many, many respects, including in the media, then we also have to expect that the Russian people don't actually know what's going on really in Ukraine to a large degree. So it is important to target individuals and not to say that we are targeting the Russian people as a whole because they happen to be Russians.
And Dr. Polyakova, why does it, why is it that it seems that sanctioning oligarchs takes such a long time? What is the process that needs to be gone through? And is it, I suppose, part of it is proving, some sort of link to Putin?
Well, it's certainly incredibly complicated. These individuals, of course, don't hold their assets or their money in their own name. There's an incredibly complex system of shell companies and other means of hiding wealth that spreads across their family members, spreads across acquaintances. And it's really uncovering this dark web of corruption that is the key. And that is why I think the White House in the United States, as well as allies, are taking the right step by establishing a task force to be able to track down and enforce these sanctions, not just on these individuals, but what's really important here, I think, and what's actually quite new in this round of sanctions than what we've seen previously, is that they are also targeting close family members. Of course, these people have property all over the world. They have it in all kinds of hidden offshore accounts. And I think we have to aggressively track these down, shut them down, so they start to hit really hard these individuals at home. And certainly there will be effects from broader sanctions, not these sanctions, on the Russian people. But I think what's really interesting to watch now is that most of the effects are now happening from companies, American companies, UK companies, European companies, from pulling out of the Russian market, even though they are not being forced to, but the sanctions regime is making it difficult for them to operate there. And just today we saw a run on IKEA happening in St. Petersburg because IKEA announced it will no longer operate in Russia. So I think these kinds of second-tier effects are actually what's needed to start to really make it clear to the Russian people that their government has been lying to them, and that they unfortunately are going to have to bear some of those costs because of the Kremlin's brutal war against Ukraine.
Right, and Misha, what about these, wealthy Russians who are giving money to the Conservative Party? I mean, not necessarily would they have close connections to Putin, I suppose?
No, not necessarily, but you have to understand why this sort of environment has emerged in the first place. And that's why it's really important when we do this is not just to target Russians, but to target the mechanisms which successive British governments have actually facilitated so that people from all over the world can turn London into the money laundering capital of the world. And with regards to the Tory party, I think we should really start to scrutinize where the wealth of those people who've donated to the Tory party actually came from. If you look, for example, at Yevgeny Lebedev, who was ennobled, of course, by Boris Johnson, despite the House of Lords Appointments Committee arguing against that ennoblement because of this was after they'd received information from MI6 about Lebedev, are we looking at money that was made legitimately in the 1990s by his father, or was there some dodgy stuff in operation there? We have to look at all this stuff. If you look at the House of Commons Select Committee from 2018 on security and intelligence, the report on Russia that Boris Johnson tried to kick in the long grass and postpone its publication until after the election in 2019. If you look at that, there are two clear messages that came out of that. First of all, the Tories receive a lot of money from Russians. Secondly, the House of Commons Select Committee believed there was sufficient evidence to examine what the Russian involvement in the Brexit referendum of 2016 was. So there are all sorts of questions which emerge out of this. Whether they're actually going to be examined properly, I don't know. I don't hold out a huge amount of hope.
Okay, and just finally, Dr. Polyakova, you think, I was reading earlier today, that you think that institutions, like museums and so forth, need to be careful about accepting money from oligarchs going forward.
Absolutely. We have seen this pattern emerge of the last 20 years where these Russian oligarchs who are getting wealthy by stealing from the Russian people through corruption are whitewashing their reputations by being listed on the boards of trustees of incredibly prestigious cultural institutions, the Guggenheim being one, but many, many others. And maybe there was an excuse for that 20 years ago, 15 years ago, when we didn't really know the true nature of the regime. These individuals looked like maybe legitimate businessmen. But now that we have a war in Europe, a completely unprovoked aggression from Russia, every one of these oligarchs has been complacent in this war. All of their businesses and all their wealth begotten in all kinds of corrupt ways has been supporting this regime. So I think now is the time to offload this money by nonprofit institutions or cultural institutions to send a clear message of no more, because the picture is a little too crystal clear now. And frankly, I don't think you want to be in a position as one of these highbrow cultural institutions where suddenly you find yourself listing on your board of trustees someone who's been sanctioned by the United States or the UK or Europe.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a huge reputational risk there, and I don't think it's worth it.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. Dr. Polyakova and also Misha Glenny, thank you both very much indeed.
Thank you.